The terrifying vision. Saint Teresa witnessed during a funeral mass. It was a day that seemed ordinary to all who attended. The chapel was quiet, the pews filled with family, friends, and parishioners who had come to honor the deceased. The smell of incense lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of flowers placed near the altar. The solemn prayers of the Mass echoed softly, accompanied by the gentle rise and fall of the choir, their voices weaving a tapestry of calm devotion. To the world, it was just another funeral, a final farewell to someone who had walked the earth and now returned to God. But Saint Teresa of Avila perceived what others could not. Her heart, attuned to the spiritual realities of the world, felt a presence beyond the ordinary. She writes that the chapel became transparent to her, as though the walls of this world fell away and revealed a higher realm. There, the souls of the departed were being judged, not by humans, not by earthly standards, but by the light of divine truth. In obedience to her confessors, Teresa recorded what she saw, knowing the weight of her vision. It was not born of imagination or pious fantasy. It was a revelation permitted by God, a glimpse into the ultimate destiny that awaits every soul. As she sat quietly, witnessing the ceremony, the atmosphere thickened with a sense of unseen presence. She saw the soul of the deceased begin its journey into eternity, a journey that would reveal the hidden depths of that life. And in that moment, the ordinary funeral transformed into a terrifying and awe-inspiring lesson about the reality of life, death, and divine judgment. Saint Teresa observed with a clarity that shook her very soul that the moment a person departs from this world is not merely a passage from life to death, but an encounter with the fullness of divine truth. The soul, once freed from the body, stands in the immediate presence of God. In an instant, faster than thought, everything hidden in life is laid bare. Nothing is concealed. Every act of virtue, every small kindness offered quietly, every prayer whispered in secret, every private sacrifice, these shine like stars in the light of God's gaze, and every moment of selfishness, every unrepented sin, every trace of pride, anger, or neglect becomes just as visible, revealed with the brilliance and precision of divine justice. Teresa could see that the soul can no longer hide. All excuses vanish. All pretense, all outward appearances, all efforts to disguise the heart, fall away in the presence of absolute truth. It is a truth so pure, so unyielding, that the soul must confront it fully, without delay, without defense, without shelter. It is a moment of total exposure, not a fleeting judgment, but a reality as vivid as the air one breathes, as unavoidable as the rising of the sun. For those who had lived in grace, the vision was gentle. Teresa saw their souls enveloped in a light so tender that it seemed to cradle them. The small sacrifices they made, the prayers offered in solitude, the love shared in quiet humility, all of it came alive in a brilliance that no human eye could ever witness. These souls moved with serenity, carried as if by an unseen hand, guided with a perfect knowledge of where they were going. Every hidden act of devotion, every act of mercy that had passed unnoticed by the world, now shone with eternal significance. It was not merely beauty, it was the expression of a life aligned with God, the peace that comes from having embraced Him even in the small, secret moments of life. But Teresa's vision did not linger solely on the peaceful. It turned also to those unprepared for this encounter, and what she saw filled her with awe and dread. She witnessed souls recoiling from the light that reveals all. They were unready to meet the clarity of truth, to stand naked in the presence of God's perfection. Their sins, hidden for a lifetime from human eyes, pressed upon them like lead. Their pride, anger, jealousy, and neglect became tangible weights, pulling them down, bending them under a gravity that only God's truth can produce. The light itself did not change. It remained perfect, unwavering, merciful, yet holy. And yet the souls, unprepared, could not endure it. They trembled, shivered, and shied away, consumed by fear, confusion, and sorrow. Teresa describes seeing the soul fall under the weight of its choices, as if an invisible hand cast it downward, a hand that is neither cruel nor accidental, but simply the inescapable consequence of the life lived. There is no deception, no delay, no mitigation. The truth is revealed in all its brilliance and in all its horror. The soul must face itself, stripped of illusions, stripped of comfort, stripped of excuses. Yet even in this terrifying vision there was illumination. Teresa understood something profound. Life is lived perpetually between two extremes, between the calm of grace and the torment of unpreparedness. And in that moment, she realized that a funeral, though outwardly solemn and simple, is never merely a ceremony for the living. It is a window into eternity. It reveals the spiritual reality of every soul, showing how what is hidden in life becomes exposed at the moment of death. The vision also impressed upon her the urgent responsibility of the living. Every act matters. Every choice matters. The soul that meets God in grace is guided, comforted, and illuminated. The soul that meets God unprepared encounters a truth so vast, so unrelenting, that it cannot be ignored. And while this revelation is terrifying, it is not meant to despair. It is meant to awaken, to purify, to move hearts toward repentance, toward mercy, toward love. In that sacred space, Saint Teresa saw eternity itself mirrored in the fleeting moment of a soul departing. She understood that the hour of death is absolute, that divine truth is immediate, and that the weight of a life lived in secret is revealed in all its glory or all its terror. The funeral, she realized, was not a simple farewell. It was a glimpse of what awaits all souls, and in her vision she saw the stakes of life with a clarity so profound that it would remain with her forever, shaping her prayers, her penances, and her understanding of God's mercy and justice. Every soul, she knew, stands before God fully exposed, and the choices made in life, every hidden thought and every secret act of love or neglect, will determine whether the soul meets the divine light with peace or with anguish beyond words. As Saint Teresa continued to witness the unfolding vision, her heart was struck with a weight she could hardly bear, the stark, unflinching contrast between souls. It was as if the light of eternity itself had divided the living from the unprepared, revealing with crystalline clarity what human eyes cannot see. One soul, she observed, met death with serenity, enveloped in the radiance of God's mercy. It moved with an inner calm, a gentle glow that reflected a life lived in quiet devotion. This soul had cultivated virtue in secret, embraced humility in moments unnoticed, and nurtured love that the world never acknowledged. Every private prayer whispered in a lonely chamber, every act of service offered without fanfare, every hidden devotion, each became luminous, each shone forth with eternal significance. Teresa saw the soul pass into eternity as one might glide along a calm river, carried forward by an invisible hand that guided with absolute knowledge and care. There was no fear, no confusion, no regret. Every choice it had made, every act of love and sacrifice, seemed to align perfectly with God's will. The soul's joy was quiet but complete, a serenity that could not be described in human words. The light it now inhabited was not just illumination, but affirmation, a divine acknowledgement that a life lived in grace, even quietly, is never wasted. Yet, just beyond that peace, Teresa's vision turned to a far different scene. She saw souls who had lived in neglect, pride, or hardness of heart. She writes with trembling honesty that the contrast was immediate and unyielding. These souls were exposed fully, confronted by the light that reveals all. Every hidden fault, every selfish thought, every act of cruelty or indifference was laid bare. The soul recoiled as though the very radiance burned it, striking with a force that revealed the weight of its choices. Anguish, shame, confusion, and despair became visible in the posture of the soul itself. Teresa could see the turmoil as clearly as if she were watching a storm twist through a landscape. This revelation was not random or capricious. It was the perfect, impartial justice of God, swift and complete. She writes that she felt the truth pressing upon her own heart, a mirror reflecting the fragility of every human soul. What humans often dismiss as insignificant, what is hidden from society, what is forgotten or ignored, these carry eternal consequences. Each moment, each thought, each action or omission shapes the soul's encounter with divine truth. In the midst of this vision, Teresa realized something crucial. The funeral, which for the living seemed quiet, mournful, and solemn, was for her an unfiltered glimpse into eternity. It was a revelation of what awaits every soul. The hour of death is absolute. No human pretense, no outward act of piety, no ceremony or ritual can mask the true state of the soul. In God's presence, every life, every choice, every hidden moment is fully transparent. Yet this contrast, she understood, is not given to frighten unnecessarily. It is given to awaken, to stir the living from complacency, to inspire vigilance, repentance, and sincere devotion. The vision is a call, not merely to fear, but to reflection, to action, to realignment with God's will. Teresa saw with piercing clarity that the fate of every soul is determined not by circumstance, not by appearances, but by the choices made in the quiet hours of life. The final hour reveals what has always been true, the invisible now made visible. The serene soul and the recoiling soul exist side by side in eternity, each the inevitable fruit of a life lived either in grace or neglect. She understood that God's justice and mercy operate together, but in ways that the human mind struggles to comprehend. The mercy of God comforts the prepared. The justice of God confronts the unprepared. Both are absolute, and both demand attention from the living. Teresa's vision was a lesson etched into her heart. To live in grace is to align with the light, to embrace humility, to offer love quietly, and to cultivate virtue in secret. For every soul, the choices of this life define the experience of the next. The image of contrast remained with her long after the funeral ended. She could never forget it, the serenity of those embraced by grace, the terror of those exposed in unpreparedness. It haunted her, not as despair, but as a call to vigilance. Each soul moves toward eternity, carrying the weight of its life choices. Every hidden act, every small kindness, every unrepented sin matters. And the hour of death will reveal the truth with perfect clarity, leaving no soul unexposed, no life unaccounted for, and no choice unrevealed. For Saint Teresa, this vision became a living lesson, a reminder of the delicate balance between life and eternity. And for all who hear her words, it is a call to reflect. How will we meet the divine light? How will we live in the quiet, hidden moments that define the soul? The contrast of fate is real. and it waits for each of us. Even amid the terrifying revelation of souls unprepared for eternity, Saint Teresa of Avila perceived the unshakable presence of mercy. She writes that God's light did not vanish, even for those who had strayed far from his grace. It remained, shining with an intensity that was at once gentle and unyielding, a light that neither faltered nor withdrew. The soul that had lived in humility and virtue met it with serenity. It embraced the radiance as though coming home to a place it had always belonged. The soul that had lived in sin, however, recoiled, overwhelmed by the clarity that revealed every hidden fault. Fear gripped these souls, and yet the light did not waver. It shone upon all alike, a testament not to human merit, but to the holiness and constancy of God. Teresa understood, with a depth that left her trembling, that mercy and judgment are never opposed, but exist together as expressions of the same divine reality. God's justice is not arbitrary, nor is his mercy selective. It is precise, holy, and inescapable. Every choice, every hidden thought, every neglected duty, every act of love or indifference, each is accounted for in the eternal scale. Nothing can be hidden, nothing can be altered. And yet, in that very reckoning, the profound mercy of God is revealed. Even the sight of souls facing fear and torment is, paradoxically, an expression of love. He allows the living and the departed to encounter the truth, not to condemn, but to illuminate, to awaken, to call hearts back to himself. Teresa reflected on the ways this mercy manifests in the world of the living. The funeral mass, the prayers that rise like incense, the hymns that swell with human devotion, these are not empty rituals. They are meaningful, acts that honor God and intercede for the souls of the faithful departed. Yet, she understood with piercing clarity that these outward signs cannot substitute for a life rooted in grace, a life lived in secret, in prayer, in humble obedience, and in the cultivation of virtue. This alone prepares the soul for the ultimate encounter with divine truth. The external ceremonies guide, they comfort, they intercede, but they cannot replace the inward conversion of the heart. In witnessing this divine revelation, Teresa grasped the profound duality of grace. It is both a gift and a responsibility. God offers his mercy freely, yet that gift demands response. The soul that has embraced grace finds peace at the final hour. It meets eternity with joy, trust, and illumination. The soul that has rejected it faces terror, confusion, and despair. In the presence of God's unchanging light, the truth of each life is laid bare, and the consequences of every choice become unmistakable. But the vision was not solely about the deceased. Teresa saw clearly that it was also a message for the living. Every person walking between light and darkness, between grace and sin, stands at a precipice invisible to the human eye. Each decision, each hidden act, each devotion, each neglect, these shape the soul's readiness to meet God. The hour of death is mercifully unknown, yet perfectly decisive. It reveals what has always been true, bringing clarity and illumination to lives lived in secret, often unnoticed, but never unseen by God. This vision, Teresa realized, is a call to urgent reflection. It is an invitation to examine one's own life with honesty and humility, to seek reconciliation with God before the final hour arrives. The mercy of God is not a license to delay, nor is it a permission to sin. It is a luminous warning and a guiding hand. It calls the living to repentance, to love, to prayer, to acts of service that mirror the life of Christ. Every soul is given the opportunity to embrace this grace, to cultivate virtue, to prepare for the moment when eternity itself will unfold in its full reality. Saint Teresa saw that mercy and judgment coexist not in opposition, but as intertwined expressions of God's perfect holiness. Justice reveals the consequences of sin. Mercy offers the path of return, the chance for conversion, and the promise of peace to those who seek him. The vision of the souls, both serene and fearful, became for Teresa a profound lesson. God's light exposes, but it also invites. It judges, but it heals. It reveals, but it redeems. And for those who remain alive to walk in the world between light and darkness, Teresa's experience is a solemn call. Pray, reflect, examine the secret corners of your life. Seek God in humility. Offer every hidden act of love and devotion to him. Do not delay in embracing his mercy, for the hour of encounter comes swiftly, and in that hour the state of the soul will be fully revealed. The lesson of mercy and judgment is both terrifying and comforting. Terrifying because it lays bare the consequences of sin, comforting because it demonstrates that God's light reaches every soul, and his mercy offers the possibility of alignment, peace, and eternal joy. For Saint Teresa, this vision became a guiding truth, shaping her prayers, her devotion, and her intercessions for others. And for all who hear her words, it is a reminder that God's mercy is never absent, his justice never arbitrary, and that the choices of each life matter, in ways seen and unseen, until the final revelation. From that day forward, Saint Teresa could not attend a funeral without her heart turning instinctively to prayer. She prayed, not only for those whose names were known, whose faces were familiar, and whose lives had touched her, but also for the countless souls hidden from human view, those whose lives passed quietly, unnoticed, or even in darkness. She prayed for the departed, for the living who teetered between light and sin, and for herself, acknowledging her own fragility, her own need for grace. In these moments, she understood profoundly that life is a preparation, a careful, deliberate shaping of the soul for the final encounter with God's light. Every choice, every thought, every act of kindness or neglect, every prayer whispered in secret, every failure and every triumph, these shape the experience of eternity. Teresa calls us to reflection, not out of fear alone, but out of love and truth. Are we ready to meet the divine reality that waits for every soul? Are we cultivating humility, patience, and love in our hidden lives? Or are we drifting in pride, comfort, and neglect? Each day is a gift, each hour a chance to align ourselves with grace. And yet, so often, the hours slip by unnoticed, the moments of opportunity ignored. The funeral she witnessed was not meant to terrify us into despair, but to awaken the heart to the profound truth of eternity. It was meant to inspire vigilance, to cultivate compassion for others, and to illuminate the quiet importance of the choices we make when no one is watching. Saint Teresa's vision reminds us that death is not the end, but a revealing. It is a moment when the soul stands fully exposed, fully known, fully understood, before the unyielding and yet merciful light of God. In that instant, mercy and justice meet perfectly. Those who have embraced grace meet it with serenity. Those who have turned away, even slightly, meet it with awe and fear. And all are accounted for, all are seen, all are met with truth. Let this vision inspire awe, reflection, and courage in our own lives. Pray for those who have passed, that their souls may find rest and illumination. Pray for those living in shadows of sin, that they may find the path of repentance and love. Pray for yourself that your soul may be ready, that your heart may be aligned with God's will, and that your life may reflect the hidden virtues that will shine in eternity. Let this story guide your daily life. Let it move you to live intentionally, not casually. Let it remind you that grace is offered every day in each encounter, each choice, and each act of love. Seek mercy in moments of weakness. Embrace it in moments of strength. Cultivate holiness quietly, consistently, faithfully. Prepare your soul for the moment when the hidden will be revealed, when the heart will be laid bare, and when eternity will open fully before your life. And remember, this is not a call to despair, but a call to awakening. God's mercy is constant. His justice is holy, and in this delicate balance, every soul is given the chance to rise, to choose love over pride, humility over self-will, and grace over neglect. Saint Teresa's experience, though terrifying in its vision, is ultimately a testament to God's infinite love, a love that calls each of us to vigilance, devotion, and prayer, so that when the final hour comes, we may stand before the divine light prepared, peaceful and fully embraced.